Well, thank you guys so much for the invitation, and it's just been wonderful to be a part of lots of energy and work in this area. And I'm super indebted to a few. I should have put additional co-authors on here because since I talked with you guys, or since I was hearing you guys on day one, I've edited this with a lot of help from Amanda Catrone, whose program I put up on the chat box. So Amanda leads the Climate Program Office water sector funding out of the what's called now the ADSI program. So thank you to Amanda for some slides, as well as David Valley, who's our lead for flood inundation mapping. So you'll see some information in there, as well as Heidi Stiller from the Southeast region, who's been part of an effort around sea level rise, which I'll share with you as well. So many thanks to lots of folks in NOAA. So you're going to get an overview of what we're up to. So I'm sure you guys know this about NOAA, but our mission is really to understand and predict the changes in climate, weather, oceans, and coasts. We share that knowledge with others in a very meaningful and impactful way, in a very deliberate way. And we do that in addition to our mission of conserving and managing coastal and marine ecosystems. So NOAA has been using a term authoritative, and my next slide, I'll get into that a little bit more, but the foundation of authoritative information is really the investment that we've made in our observational infrastructure. So when people say they're using NOAA data, one hopes that they're using the breadth of the observed record that we have, both from the satellite information as well as the in situ or on the ground measurements that are taken. And all of those data end up being stewarded at the National Centers for Environmental Information, which is my home office, or the data centers, where really we're looking at every single number. We're looking at every single record to make sure that it's validated by stations nearby, that it's been actually observed. There are whole committees that are looking not so much at the difference between a 6 and an 8, but close. They're looking at exactly that size of that hailstone and making sure that what they put in the archive for using NOAA data is really valid. In addition, we have researchers that are on the ground and doing all of the cutting edge research that includes modeling and prediction and projection into not only the historical data all the way back to 1850, but also the forward-looking projections. And I should have mentioned Dan Barry, who's our program manager for the predictions and projections piece. And I didn't get his slide in there, but I will talk a little bit about that. Lastly, sort of the tip of the spear, if you will, which is a term that gets used about my job a lot, which is this orange section here about service delivery. And really, as the Regional Climate Services Director for the Eastern region, I have 5 other colleagues around the country that can be supportive to you in finding and accessing and using NOAA's climate information. So I hope that you'll avail yourselves of those folks, and I'll put their names up later on. So authoritative, what does it mean? To me, it's a bit argumentative. It's like, hey, we're the authority. And so I want to break that down a little bit into NOAA's mission of science, service, and stewardship, and really think about the Centers for Environmental Information, or that data center, as offering the credible representation of the Earth system, really examining your data sources. And so if you look in the green piece on the stewardship of information, those data are discoverable. You can find them in NCEI. We also are clear on their origin, and we take very seriously the preservation of that information. We also ensure that our data are accurate, like I mentioned. There are whole committees that look at representing the Earth system very properly and accurately. And then we do make a huge investment in the service aspect of that. And that is understanding that you guys are using our information is really helping to offer the value of that information. It's not valuable unless somebody's using it. And so we spend a lot of time talking with audiences like this and others to really think about how NOAA's information is used. And if there are concerns about that, then we get into that as well. So here's one of the products that we use all the time to kind of put climate into context. And this is called the $1 Billion Disasters Report, produced by my colleague and friend, Adam Smith. And so Adam has really been taking a lot of data, not just from NOAA, but also from FEMA and from Health and Human Services and from Census Bureau, And he has a whole committee of folks that work on characterizing the disasters and correcting them for the consumer price index. So they are corrected for inflation. So the bar graph showing an increase in the number of extreme events or billion-dollar disasters is not just a reflection of inflation, but is in fact a change in the number of severe storms in the green, for example, as well as the number of droughts and wildfires, tropical cyclones in yellow, and various versions of the yellow. So this is really a map that's just 2023. So these maps are updated quarterly, and they're very useful if you're working with your boards of directors or others that are like, wait, why are you looking at climate? And do we have to do this? These maps are really helpful. So like I said, they're updated quarterly. They're also updated annually. And this one from the third quarter of 2023, calendar 2023, is really just that we've had 23 different billion-dollar events, and we're not through calendar 23. So it's a bit something to look at, and I offer you the QR code if you have an interest in diving deeper into this. Just hover your phone camera over this funny looking dinosaur thing, and you'll be able to see and use this tool. So I encourage you to take a look at that. I just want to say that NOAA's investment in that whole tip of the spear piece about service delivery has its roots in the service delivery framework, which Alyssa and Julie showed on the first day as part of an introduction that I would be speaking. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, except to say that NOAA makes investments in the building of trusted relationships in the 1 o'clock space here. And then we also gather and try to understand what it is that you guys need in terms of accessing or understanding our climate information. We bring that back into the agency and work to translate that within the agency and also with other federal agencies. So we do a lot of work with EPA and Army Corps of Engineers and Fish and Wildlife Service and others to make sure that if it's a need that's heard out here, that it also goes to the agency that's best able to respond to that need. So I'm really proud of this work because I feel like this was something that really helped move the needle in our coordination with one another. So from the perspective of a water utility, people have heard me say this all the time, so I'll say it here, and that is we're trying to help you guys have to avoid NOAA on a Monday, EPA on a Tuesday, Army Corps on a Wednesday. So we are working in that regional space with our federal partners to address and respond to your needs and to evaluate whether or not those needs are being met. So I did say I'd mention my other colleagues around the country. So especially for WUCA members that are on the West Coast, I really hope that you'll connect with my colleague here who works out of the Boulder office, but really is responsible for this green area here. And his name is Joe Casola. So he's hopefully very valuable to those in San Francisco and LA and others that are members of WUCA. Additionally, my colleague Sharon Misik covers the southern region, and so I'm certainly going to share the talk about Tampa Bay water with her, covering the southeast and out through Texas and into New Mexico. So no, sorry, I guess she doesn't. She goes to Arizona. Yeah, she goes out to New Mexico. Anyway. Didn't see any WUCA members in Doug's region in the Midwest, but this is my region, and that's me in the Eastern region. So we do, like I said, coordinate nationally and all the way to the state level, and you guys should also avail yourselves of the regional climate centers. In the East, that's at Cornell University, and in the Southeast, that's at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And in the West, it's at the Desert Research Institute at the University of Nevada. So anyway, just a few places where I think you guys can access information that's very specific to your geography. And in addition, I'll mention that you could call your state climatologist, and I hope that you will by finding those guys at aasc.org. The American Association of State Climatologists covers all of the states of the US, including Massachusetts now as of July of 23. So super exciting. So thanks to Amanda for this slide that really is a timeline of the effort and engagement that we've had with the water utilities since really 2010, when we first started building tools and resources specific to the water utility sector. So in the Climate Program Office, its foundation is with research. And so there are a series of studies that were led by Nancy Beller Sims, who many of you guys may remember, and certainly in the SART program. Nancy was the head of that for a while before her retirement. But we're super glad to have Amanda on board. And she was really part of several of these more recent studies where we worked with the regional climate centers and with the climate adaptation program, formerly known as RISA. I feel like we're talking about the artist formerly known as, but those folks that are our investment on the ground are really those that engage with the water utilities directly through some of these studies, and the results of those studies have led to the development of things like our water resources dashboard, a place where you can find all of NOAA's information in one spot. That's updated routinely, and it was created through the Climate Program Office and our partners at the Northeast Regional Climate Center. So several things that you guys can look at, and I can give you those links later on. Also, on Monday, you guys talked about the sea level rise technical report. And so I was digging into that a little bit because I was hearing the frustration, and it's constant, right? About like, well, do we use NOAA's tools or NASA's tools, and how are we going to do this? And so we thought that we would get together as a series of agencies and produce an interagency report, but then agencies made their own tools after that report. So I dug into this a little bit more recently, and I'm excited to say that those agencies are now getting together and producing something that they're going to call sealevel.gov. No agency meatball, if you will, whether it's NASA or NOAA, but it is going to be coordinating and housing all of that data on NOAA's Digital Coast platform, using all of the methodology and including the functionality onto a new website. So I just want to say that we heard you, and this part of about listening to user needs. There was a need for greater data granularity, and also a need to close some of these gaps and to adjust to some of the confusion that folks have about finding things in different agencies. So we are working a lot more together on offering technical assistance to understand these tools and resources, and to really listen to the communities on that. So, so thank you, and I hope that you'll continue to share with me and others from NOAA a lot of your information needs so that we can make some responses like this. So part of that will include a sea level rise calculator. The images come from NASA, and I won't go into it because I think you guys have already talked about some of the NASA tools, but you'll see there's a NASA tool, there's an Army Corps of Engineers tool, there are NOAA tools. And so sealevel.gov is meant to add the projections for sea level, as well as historical conditions, maps and visualizations, and bring together that functionality that's been scattered currently. And this is being done, it's funny, there's the service delivery model, but this is being done with BIL funding, and is incorporating some of the work of the flood inundation mapping and other Atlas 1415. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit more to show you guys some of the other tools that are going to go into this. So partly, and somebody early on Monday mentioned the value of flood inundation mapping services. This is a new resource that's coming on board from the Weather Service using, again, BIL funding, and using images to depict what's really happening. So these are current these are current river flood maps that show when a river goes above flood stage. These are used in the observed record, and then are used by the Weather Service so these are observed in the USGS way, but then they're translated into river forecasts and predictions for future flooding. So what we're excited about, though, is not just showing that the river flooded on the left, but is showing, okay, where exactly was the flood, and what does it look like in a normal system, and then also what does it look like under flooded conditions. So taking a look at where the river went in terms of extent and depth is where we've been trying to address user needs that are often saying, that's great that it's going to flood, but where is it going to flood, and how deep and how long? So these are all questions that we're hoping to address through flood inundation mapping services in the coming years using BIL funding.
Ellen, you've got about 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so this is also available on the Weather Services site. Now, right now, they're covering 10% of the United States, but that does include, luckily, the Northeast region. And so I'm really excited to hear on Monday that you guys are using this stuff. There's a URL in the corner, so you can access the GIS maps that are going into covering the flood inundation mapping and the observed record here in all of these different stations that are going into that. Did want to talk about Atlas 1415. This is about precipitation frequency. You guys understand that the mid-Atlantic hasn't been covered. That will be covered, told by 2025. But I do, I can already see the eye rolls, even though I can't see your faces, but I do understand that this takes a lot of time because they're going through thousands and thousands of data points. So it is not enough and it is not accurate to use a small number of stations to produce flood risk. So it takes time to go through all those data and make sure that you're getting a coverage that is accurate to the level that you're using it at. Meaning the local scale. So understanding that that takes time, we also do have prototype products, which I can show. The NOAA Atlas 15 product is going to first cover the whole nation. It's going to use BIL funding, and it is finally going to incorporate climate projections. There are products that I'm not sure I included, and I should have, that are going to be there in the meantime between now and 2026, when you guys will have flood, you'll have precipitation frequency events in a climate context. A little bit on compound flooding I was told to cover, meaning the combination of the salty and the freshy, where it intersects right at our cities. And I did just briefly chat with a couple of our partners, Molly Mitchell at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science and Philip Orton from Stevens and Institute in New York, that are working on these joint rainfall probabilities and also storm surge probabilities, and combining those in what we call compound flooding. So stay tuned, definitely in the realm of research, but one that we're definitely addressing in NOAA. And I'll stop there.